Now, for a lot of Pinoys, the midsize SUV is an aspirational vehicle. They're big, they're high off the ground, and they're generally efficient. They're not the most luxurious things in the market, but a lot of you guys, well, just can't stop buying them. And also, a lot of you guys seem to default to this one. Now, of course, this model needs no introduction. It's none other than the Toyota Fortuner. The thing is, should you buy one as a second-hand unit? And is it actually a reliable car, or is it just being carried by that Toyota badge? Well, it's time to find that out. But first, we're going to do a variant rundown. Now, initially, there were 3 or 4 model grades. So it starts off with this one. This is the basest of the base models. This is the 2.4G with a manual, and it only comes with 2-wheel drive. Now, moving one up is the 2.4G with an automatic. And then you got the 2.4V with a bit more equipment. And then you have the 2.8V 4-wheel drive. Now, later on in its life, there was the addition of the Q, the 2.8Q, the 2.8 LTD, both available in 4-wheel drive or 2-wheel drive, and the top-of-the-line GRS, which you can only get as 4-wheel drive. But we're going to take a look at the older models, but the spec generally applies to all of them. So this particular Fortuner, well, in terms of bodywork, there's not much to worry about unless you go off-roading all the time, which this one didn't because it's a 2-wheel drive model. So some things to watch out for, you have rust getting in between the body and the frame of the vehicle. So get that underwash done if you do frequently go off-road, or just at least give it an underwash every once in a while. Now, the bodywork itself, it's fine. You don't have to worry about rust on the surfaces or whatnot. Paint quality is generally good, although some owners do report paint fading a little early on in their lives, but that depends. If you have a garage that's covered, you're going to be fine, but if you always leave it out in the open, well, paint fade is inevitably going to be happening to you. Now, in terms of the headlights, these didn't really suffer from severe yellowing, unlike Toyotas from the previous generations. This headlight cluster is actually rather resilient and resists fading rather well. So if you do see one with faded headlights and whatnot, it's either that thing's been taken off-road pretty often, or it's rarely cleaned, or it's actually a replacement headlight. So some of those signs do lead to a bit of abuse, or it's been in an accident before. So you always have to look at the headlights, and you can judge the condition of the car and how well it was taken care of just by taking a peek at these. But what you need to give bigger attention to is the under chassis. Now, these are still trucks at the end of the day, and these come with heavy-duty bits that, yes, are going to be more expensive to replace and to run. So that's a common misconception that if you have one of these, it's going to be easy on maintenance costs. Not the case at all, even if this is a Toyota. So for the under chassis, what goes clunky? As far as we can tell, there's no major red flags in the chassis department for the Fortuner, no cracking subframes or any of that. But what you do have to watch out for are mainly the bushings down there, especially the lower control arm bushings, because that does a lot of the hard work. Now, signs that it's worn out, well, you're going to hear a bit of clunking down there, or lagotok as your mechanic would say, and your steering isn't going to feel as tight as it once was. Now, for the 2-wheel drive models, you don't have to worry about a CV joint because, well, it's not powering the front wheels anyway. But for the 4-wheel drive models, you have to take note of that. Now, the sign of a worn CV is you're going to hear clicking noises if you've turned the wheel all the way to one side. If it does a tack, 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 tack sound, that means you have to change it as soon as possible, because if you don't, that CV joint can snap and you will lose drive to the front wheels. Get those CVs changed in the 4-wheel drive model, especially if it's done a bit of off-roading and has done a fair bit of miles. See, told you it comes with a manual. Now, anyway, this Fortuner is a 2016 model, so it's one of the earlier cars. So this gives us a pretty good gauge of how well the Fortuner interior wears down over the years. And in some cases, they do wear okay, but in this particular car, well, okay, the leatherette material starts to let go after a couple of years. Now, other bits that sag is this one here by the armrest. It wrinkles in an odd pattern from time to time, but again, not all Fortuners do this, but it is worth taking note. Now, as for the interior fabrics, as you see here, the interior fabrics are generally durable. They don't rip easily, they don't tear easily, even with hard use. Now, another thing to note about the Fortuner interiors is the early models had this sort of caramel interior combination, and it does get grubby over time. So a good bit of detailing work will sort that out. But if you see a Fortuner that still has a clean sort of interior panel, that points to two things. It's either it's a well-kept unit or it's been replaced already. Now, in terms of equipment, well, this is the basis of the base model. So you do get manual climate control. Moving up to a V model, you do get a digital climate control panel instead. Now, the touchscreen changed a lot over the years. So initial models had this rather basic system that you could actually see from a Vios, and then they upgraded it around 2018 or 2019 to include Apple CarPlay and Android Auto. And at the same time, they did switch up the graphics a little bit. As for other equipment, well, all variants except the manual come with cruise control, and you also get these manual adjustable seats. Although moving to the higher variants, you do get power adjustable seats. So is there anything that goes wrong in the interior? Well, okay, we've said something about the rather thin-wearing interior leatherette bits, but there's generally nothing that goes wrong in it. I mean, even the light and the instrument panel still works. The backlight for the center stack still works. Now, this being the manual model, we have to point out that you have to watch out for stuff like this: a squeaky clutch pedal, or you have to check your clutch engagement. Now, while we're on the subject of transmission, there was actually a recall for it in its early years, around 2016. Now, some units were affected, and the fault was there has to be an ECU reprogramming to prevent the jerkiness of the transmission, or shift shock, as they say. Now, a lot of units, and the ones we drove in the past at least, didn't suffer from that, but a couple of owners did report it, and Toyota did issue a service bulletin for it. So you could just pop onto your Toyota dealership, get it reprogrammed, and drive off. The rear space isn't the most accommodating, admittedly. There are similarly sized SUVs that offer more legroom, more headroom, and whatnot. But the advantage of the Fortuner is it is wide enough. So this is a true 7-seat SUV. Now, what to look out for here at the back? Obviously, you have to check if these things are still fluid. And in this case, well, it doesn't really move that much anymore. So check the seat railings if they do slide back and forth as far back as possible. Now, another thing here is the silver trims at the back of the Fortuner. You see them on the door, you see them here right on the center console. And it doesn't take a lot to scratch these off, and it is a fair indicator of how the interior was treated. And while we're at this panel here, the 12-volt socket, well, some owners have reported that it works. Some owners have reported that after 3 or 4 or 5 years, they just stopped offering a charge, so they just get a longer cable and plug it there at the front. So check if the Fortuner unit you're looking at still has a working 12-volt socket over here at the back. Now, let's check also if the spring in the cup holder still works. So thankfully, it still does. Very fluid action right there. And you also have these bag hooks. Now, they carry up to 3 kilograms, and they're surprisingly effective, I have to say. Another thing to take note of is, of course, the rear blowers. Now we haven't heard anyone say that the rear blower is already broken, but it's still worth checking out. So if you're going to do a tour of the interior of the Fortuner, turn on all the switches, turn on all the dials, check if the rear blower still works, check if the AC is still cold, and also check bits of trim and, of course, this 12-volt socket. But other than that, there are no major reliability issues here inside the Fortuner. Now, over at the back, what do you have to look out for? Well, okay, this is the G, so it doesn't come with a power tailgate, as we shall now demonstrate. However, in models that do come with a power tailgate, you have to take note if the motor is in good condition. See, the Fortuner first came out in 2016 locally, and at the time there weren't a lot of cars with power tailgates, so the tendency at the time was, even with the motor propping it up, some people would end up forcing it down, damaging the motor, and repeated instances of that would wear out the motor, break it, and it's a very expensive part. If you do find a Fortuner with a power tailgate, check the condition of the motor always. So if you're curious how to remove the spare tire from the under chassis mount, you have to get a tool. It's standard in every Fortuner, something you should always check too. You sort of stick it in somewhere in here, and then you turn it, and it lowers the wheel down. Now, the 2.8 liter had a more interesting life because it started out with 175 horsepower and 450 newton meters of torque. And then when it was updated in about 2020 or 2021, the power rose to 201 horsepower and 500 newton meters of torque. And then in the GRS model, that power rose even more to about 221 horsepower and 550 newton meters of torque. But right here is the basic 2.4 GD engine. These engines are actually very hard wearing, even if you missed a bit of maintenance, which is, well, a sort of a Japanese thing, I suppose. But it's not that we're telling you to skip on your service intervals, because there will be problems if you do. Now, you'll rarely see a smoky Fortuner, and if you do, well, that means a couple of things. Head gasket's about to go, or the fuel injection system, it's a direct injection diesel after all, some of those injectors get clogged up. Now, do you have to worry about calibrating it or any of that? Well, no, actually, because everything's practically computer controlled in it already, so there's not much to worry about that. It's a self-adjusting system. So the moment you see smoke pouring out of the back of your Fortuner, that basically means, okay, get your injectors clean or get your gasket sorted. That's basically it. Now, I'm sure you've seen news items wherein the diesel particulate filter on these will go wrong. The thing is, the Philippine market isn't affected because we don't have diesel particulate filters here. There's no need for AdBlue or any of that. That mainly affects models with Euro 5 or Euro 6 emission regulations. Again, generally solid, sturdy powertrain. The transmission does have a recall, but while we're on the subject of recalls, there was another one for the brake booster. And it affects the 2019 models and only a certain batch, like less than 1,000 units were affected. But to check if your car is affected, you have to hop onto the Toyota website, enter your vehicle identification number or VIN, and if it comes up with something, well, it's time to head to your Toyota dealership to get that sorted out. So before we forget, there's actually another recall for the Toyota Fortuner. It affects the model years from 2017 to 2019, and it's actually for the fuel pump. Now, while we're on the subject of recalls, what can you do about it? Now, you can ask the seller if repairs have been done to it or that recall fix has been done to it. If not, you can actually use that as a bit of a bargaining tool. I mean, yes, the repair is free, but your time and effort is not. So that's something to keep in mind. Now, going back to the Fortuner, should you buy one as a second-hand car? Well, here's the thing. There are thousands and thousands and thousands of these floating around in marketplace or whatever second-hand car site you're looking at. And here's our best tip for you. Don't buy the first one you see, because there's so many to choose from, all getting different condition or maintenance or the way they were treated. So never ever go for the first one you see. Now, if you circle back and you do end up buying the first one you saw, it's always good to have like a reference of other Fortuner models. And last bit of advice, as much as possible, try to go for a bone stock unit rather than that's been transformed into an off-roader or an overlander, any of that. Because truth be told, parts don't really add to the resale value of the vehicle. I mean, what you're buying is still the car. So buy one that's as close to stock as possible and personalize it yourself afterwards. So, should you buy one? Well, quite frankly, yes. And it's not just because it's a Toyota, and it's not just because of ease of service, but because the car itself, the SUV itself, is sturdy, dependable, and reliable, and it has proven so for nearly 10 years. I mean, If you're not going to go off-road, you can always go the two-wheel drive route. If you are going to go for the four-wheel drive route, I mean, the four-wheel drive system of the Fortuner is capable. It does come with a rear locking diff, so that gives it a little bit extra when you're hitting the trails. So it's solid, it's dependable, it's reliable, and you can't really go wrong if you buy one of these, whether brand new or secondhand, for as long as you can live with that ride.